Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Human AI podcast. Skip this video to the 5 minute mark. If you don't want to see the drawing process, I'm just going to draw for 5 minutes and then we're going to start the curious exploration.
Yo, welcome to the Human AI podcast, everyone. I hear you're kicking things off with a 5 minute drawing session. Love the creative vibes. I'll chill here, ready to jump into the curious exploration when you hit that 5 minute mark. Just let me know what topic we're diving into today, and we'll get rolling.
Okay, so,
Cool. You're still in drawing mode, I bet.
Let's do it, boys. So, hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Human AI podcast. Today we're gonna do my favorite kind of episode, a curious exploration. After my first curious exploration, I had a lot of fun, guys. After my second curious exploration, I had a lot of fun. After this third one, I didn't have much fun. I was kind of tired. But I'm kind of refreshed right now, so I'm really excited to be talking to you. So, if you're not familiar with what the Curious Exploration episodes are, it's basically me and AI, Grok specifically, talking about things of my personal interest, which you hopefully might find interesting too. Yeah. Without further ado, so the point of this series, just so you understand, guys, we have a industrial series. This is university degree material, kind of more boring, but I need to do it or want to do it or whatever. And we have a national park series, which is we're gonna review a book and we can go a bit out of topic and then come back, and it's a bit more relaxed. And then we have the Jungle series, the Curious Exploration, where I talk about whatever the fuck I want, and I really enjoy it. So, having said that, let's talk with Grok. Usually these have a slow start and then we pick the pace up. And this is only going to be a 45-minute video, which is kind of a shame because we could theoretically talk for hours and it's probably going to get better and better and better the longer we talk. I'm going to do a special episode soon, doing a long curiosity video. Anyway, let's jump. I'm not going to force things much, but Grok, I want to know, how do I maximize positive impact in my life? Answer to me in 2 sentences.
To maximize positive impact in your life, focus on aligning your actions with your core values and strengths, consistently contributing to the well-being of others through small, intentional acts. Build meaningful relationships and pursue goals that create ripple effects of positivity in your community and beyond.
What job should I do?
Choosing a job depends on your passions, skills, and what kind of impact you want to make. Can you share a bit about what you love doing? Any specific
I
talents?
don't care about, do you think, I don't care about what I love. I care about what makes positive impact. But it seems like there's many paths to take to create positive impact.
Fair point. If you're focused purely on positive impact, it's about finding roles that address pressing needs. Jobs in healthcare, like being a doctor or public health worker, directly save lives. Roles in education, like teaching, empower future generations. Or positions in sustainable tech or nonprofits can tackle global issues like climate change or poverty. Want me to narrow it down based on scale of impact, like local versus global, or specific skills you might already have?
Well, wait a sec. I don't understand your answer.
My bad. Let's clear it up. You want a job that maximizes positive impact, and I mentioned fields like healthcare, education, or sustainable tech because they directly improve lives, communities, or the planet.
I think this
If that-
is it. Yes, I like calling, I want to be a scientist. I also love humanities. And I think ultimately they're the two categories, aren't they?
All right, you're drawn to being a scientist and love humanities. And yeah, those can feel like two big buckets for creating impact. As a scientist, you could drive breakthroughs in fields like medicine, environmental solutions, or tech, directly tackling problems with data and innovation. Humanities, like history, philosophy, or literature, shape how people think, foster empathy, and influence culture, which can have a deep, long-term impact. Want to explore specific scientist roles, like in biotech or climate research, versus humanities paths, like teaching?
Yeah, but
or
how do we measure positive impacts, dude? You know, how we, because everyone can say that fucking Bill Gates, like Zizek says, is a socialist. I mean, and he does do some good things, but how do we measure it? Because if I'm going to choose a job and I do some good and I do more bad, I know like utilitarianism cannot be quantified easily or at all.
Measuring positive impact is tricky since it's not just numbers. It's about outcomes and unintended consequences. You can gauge impact by looking at tangible effects, like lives improved, e.g., through healthcare or education, environmental benefits, e.g., emissions reduced, or societal shifts, e.g., policies changed through humanities work. But you've got to weigh potential downsides, like ethical trade-offs or systemic harm, which is why pure utilitarianism's tough to pin down. Want me to break down a framework, like comparing short-term versus long-term impact, or focus on how a scientist versus humanities role could be evaluated for net good?
I want to be a polymath, but it requires innovation to and mixing things together to to be positive in polymath nowadays is very hard to like specialize in one thing, never mind more than one. But yeah, how can I be a successful polymath in today's day and age? Huh? Grok, how can I be a successful polymath in today's day and age?
To be a successful polymath today, embrace lifelong learning across diverse fields like science and humanities by diving into online courses, books, and hands-on projects that spark your curiosity. Build a network of experts, focus on solving interdisciplinary problems, and share your insights through platforms like writing or speaking to amplify your impact. Want me to suggest specific skills or tools to juggle multiple disciplines effectively?
Interesting. Yes, please.
All right, to juggle multiple disciplines as a polymath, prioritize skills like critical thinking, time management, and adaptability. Learn to synthesize ideas across fields with tools like mind mapping software or note-taking apps like Notion. Use platforms like Coursera or Archive for deep dives into science and humanities, and practice communicating complex ideas simply through blogging or podcasts to build influence. Want me to recommend specific courses or ways to
How
structure
do you
your...
communicate complex ideas simply? It's such a wonderful skill to have. The Cyprus member of the European Parliament, one of the six, Fidias Panayiotou, does this very good. In general, there is this saying that if you do something and if you say something and the other person doesn't understand, it might be your fault, not theirs. And yeah, how do you do it? It feels to me like when I do presentations at school, the more I understand the material, the simpler I can explain it. So I guess one method is just friction with the material until you understand it more and more and more. But surely there's more tricks than that. And tell us any people that are really good at this and their advice.
Communicating complex ideas simply is a killer skill, and you're spot on really understanding the material's half the battle. The deeper you get into a topic, the easier it is to strip it down to its core. But there are other tricks to make it click for your audience. First, know who you're talking to and tailor your explanation to their background. Use analogies or stories that resonate with them. For example, if you're explaining a scientific concept, compare it to something familiar, like describing DNA as a recipe book for the body. Second, ditch jargon and technical terms unless you've explained them clearly. Third, structure your explanation logically. Start with the big picture, then zoom in on details, and wrap up with why it matters. Visuals, like simple diagrams or props, can also anchor abstract ideas. Finally, practice empathy. Anticipate where your audience might get lost.
Remind me number 1, 2, and 3.
All right, let's recap the key tricks for communicating complex ideas simply. 1. Know your audience and use relatable analogies or stories that
Yes,
match
the only
their...
problem with this, with the stories, is that you might fall into the trap because language is already difficult. There are so many barriers between language and truth. I see something. First of all, we have the fucking theory of interface of Hoffman and predictive processing, anti-Clark's, Freestone. Like, we have all these things. I'm not following his advice, guys. I'm not throwing terms. I'm not explaining them. But what I mean is, we have already our senses might be deceiving us a little bit if they're not evolutionarily kind of adapted. If evolution didn't make them if they didn't evolve to view objective reality because maybe it wasn't good for survival. So that's one. Then when I see something and I try to like explain it through language in my brain, it's going to be different. And it's going to be different, it's going to be limited. I'm not very good at English or whatever too, so it's going to be worse. Then when I speak it, it's going to be even worse because what I speak maybe is not as fluent as what I think. And then the other person will understand it a bit differently too. And so there's so many barriers. So when you say add another barrier, which is called analogy, we're fucked. It's not going to be the same thing. Like, this is a problem. We're talking about medicine and it's like, oh, B lymphocytes, T lymphocytes. And then instead we're talking, yes, this bad burglar came and this superhero called B lymphocytes. Yeah, I don't know if this is the way, dude. I think it's got a place, but I don't think you can go the way because you risk completely dissociating the thing from reality. And the other thing with like the simplistic thing, it reminds me a bit of a populist approach. Musk does this a lot. Like, and on one hand, yes, explain things simply, but don't explain them so simple where some things are complex, dude. This is like a main criticism of populism, but I agree. You have to explain them simply, but not too simply at the same time. I think what you said that's good is start big picture and start narrowing it down.
You're hitting on a deep issue here, and I love how you're wrestling with the tension between simplicity and truth. You're absolutely right. Language, perception, and analogies can distort reality, especially when you're trying to explain something complex like medicine or science. Our senses, shaped by evolution, might prioritize survival over objective truth, as folks like Hoffman or Friston suggest. And language adds another layer of fuzziness, especially if English isn't your first language or you're not fluent in the moment. Then, tossing in an analogy, like comparing B lymphocytes to superheroes, can stretch things even further from the actual mechanism, risking oversimplification or losing the essence. And yeah, the populist trap, like Musk sometimes does, is real. Making things too simple can sacrifice nuance and make complex truths feel trivial or misleading. But here's how to balance it. Analogies are useful to hook people, but they shouldn't replace the core concept. Use them as a bridge, not the destination. For example, you might start with a quick analogy to get folks oriented, like saying B cells are like security guards patrolling for invaders, but then pivot to the real mechanism, like how B cells produce antibodies to tag pathogens. This way, you ease them in without staying in cartoon land. Also, when you simplify, focus on the why behind the complexity. Instead of dumbing it down, distill it to the key principle that drives the idea. Like,
okay,
for
I want to
lymphocytes-
completely change topics now, and I want to ask you about Simone Weil. And I want to talk about this idea of experience. Like, the criticism with Marx is he was in theory predicting an evolution, but to live, as Stephen West from Philosophize This, as a construction worker and in the working class, wake up at 4 a.m., fucking, carry shit for 10 hours, your soul is drained. You cannot do a revolution. So, basically, from what I understand, Simone Weil wants to experience this working class struggle to see how it is. And I want us to talk a bit and kind of respect Simone Weil a bit and understand her life, if you can kind of tell us about it.
All right, let's dive into Simone Weil and her deep connection to the working class struggle. Simone Weil was a French philosopher, mystic, and activist born in 1909, who lived a short but intense life until 1943. Coming from a privileged, intellectual family, she could have coasted through an academic career. She even outscored Simone de Beauvoir in a philosophy exam. But Weil rejected that comfort to understand the oppressed firsthand. In 1934-35, she took factory jobs, including at a Renault plant, to experience the grueling reality of industrial labor. She wasn't there for money. She wanted to feel the soul-draining exhaustion and alienation workers faced, which she believed Marxist theory often romanticized or missed. As Stephen West points out, the physical and mental toll of waking up at 4 a.m. to haul stuff for hours leaves little room for revolutionary zeal. And Whale saw this up close. Her factory journal captures how exhaustion crushed her ability to think, showing her that oppression wasn't just economic but spiritual. She wrote that this kind of labor made workers feel like they had no rights, no agency, only moments of fleeting camaraderie. Whale's approach was radical. She didn't just theorize about class struggle, she lived it, even though her health was frail from childhood. This shaped her view that modern capitalism, fascism, and even Stalinism were all forms of technical and managerial oppression, not just class conflict. She also tied this to broader ideas, blending her experiences with philosophy and spirituality, arguing for a spirituality of work to restore dignity. Her time in factories shifted her concept of freedom too, from just escaping constraints to a positive ability to act with purpose despite suffering.
What do you mean, capitalism, Marx, and what you said, Leninism or whatever? Remind me, Stalinism. What did you mean? They are technical too, technical.
All right, let's clarify what I meant by Simone Weil seeing capitalism, Marxism, and Stalinism as forms of technical and managerial oppression. Weil believed these systems, despite their ideological differences, all leaned heavily on technical efficiency and bureaucratic control, which dehumanized people. Capitalism used factories and profit-driven management to turn workers into cogs, draining their individuality and spirit, as she felt in her factory work. Marxism, while critiquing capitalism, still idealized industrial progress and large-scale organization, which she thought could replicate that same alienation, if not grounded in real worker experiences. Stalinism, with its state-controlled industries and rigid planning, took this to an extreme, enforcing technical systems that crushed personal agency under the guise of socialism. For Weil, all three got caught up in prioritizing machines, production, and top-down control over human dignity and spiritual freedom. Want me to dig deeper into how she tied this to her factory experiences or her broader philosophy?
Yes.
Cool. Let's go deeper into how Simone Weil connected her factory experiences to her view of technical oppression across capitalism, Marxism, and Stalinism. When Weil worked in factories like Renault in the 1930s, she wasn't just punching a clock. She was immersing herself in the raw grind of industrial labor. She documented in her factory journal how the relentless pace, repetitive tasks, and constant oversight stripped workers of autonomy and joy. She felt her own mind dull, her body ache, and her sense of self erode, which showed her that modern work wasn't just about low wages, it was spiritually crushing. This led her to see capitalism's obsession with efficiency, profit, and mechanization as a system that reduced humans to tools, managed by bosses and machines. But Weil didn't stop at capitalism. She critiqued Marxism for buying into the same industrial worship. Marx saw factories and technology as tools for progress, eventually freeing workers through revolution. But Weil, having lived the worker's life, thought this missed the mark. Marxism's focus on collective production and large-scale systems could still alienate individuals if it prioritized output over human needs. She worried it just swapped one boss for another. Stalinism, which she saw in the Soviet Union's brutal state-controlled industries, was even worse. It used the rhetoric of socialism, but enforced rigid, technical systems, think forced quotas and gulags, that obliterated personal freedom and dignity, much like the capitalist factories she endured.
Why they called it gulag? Etymology, semiotics, semantics, please.
The term gulag has a specific origin tied to Soviet history. Etymologically, it's an acronym from Russian, Glavnaya Upravleniya Lagere, meaning main camp administration. the agency that ran the Soviet forced labor camps from the 1920s to the 1950s. Semantically, it referred to the sprawling network of camps where political prisoners, dissidents, and others were sent for re-education through brutal labor, often in horrific conditions. Over time, Gulag evolved beyond its bureaucratic roots to symbolize state oppression and human suffering, especially after Alexander Solzhenitsyn's The Gulag Archipelago exposed its horrors.
What is this?
I'm guessing you're asking about the Gulag Archipelago, since I mentioned it in connection to the term Gulag. It's a book by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, published in 1973, that exposes the Soviet Union's forced labor camp system, the Gulags, through a mix of personal accounts, historical analysis, and film.
And what would you do? Like, to send you to Gulag, was this like a location in Russia? And what would you have to do to go there?
The gulags weren't one specific location, but a network of forced labor camps scattered across the Soviet Union, often in remote, harsh places like Siberia or the far north.
What is Siberia? Sorry, continue with your answer like you would have said, just add in the beginning what Siberia is.
Alright, let me pick up where I left off and weave in what Siberia is. The gulags were a network of forced labor camps spread across the Soviet Union, often in brutal, remote regions like Siberia, a vast, cold, sparsely populated area in northern Russia, known for its harsh winters and isolation, stretching from the Ural Mountains to the Pacific. To end up in a gulag, you didn't need to commit a serious crime. Under Stalin's regime, from the 1920s to 1950s, you could be sent for things like criticizing the government, being labeled a political dissident, or even minor infractions like petty theft or arriving late to work. Intellectuals, writers, or anyone suspected of disloyalty, like owning a banned book or having foreign contacts, were prime targets. Entire groups, like kulaks, wealthier peasants, or certain ethnic minorities, were deported en masse.
So how can Zizek romanticize sometimes with Stalinism and Leninism? I don't understand.
Alright, let's unpack why Slavoj Zizek sometimes seems to romanticize Stalinism and Leninism, which can feel jarring given the gulags and oppression we just discussed. Zizek, a Slovenian philosopher, doesn't outright endorse Stalinism or Leninism as perfect systems, far from it. He calls 20th century communism, especially Stalinism, a catastrophic failure, even one of humanity's worst disasters. But his provocative style and focus on specific ideas can make it seem like he's romanticizing them. Here's the deal. Zizek admires Lenin's revolutionary audacity, the willingness to disrupt oppressive systems and rethink society from scratch, which he sees as a bold act of imagination that's rare today. With Stalinism, he sometimes highlights what he calls its inner greatness, not to praise the gulags or purges, but to point to its radical ambition to reshape society entirely, even if it went horribly wrong. For example, in his writings, like in New Left Review, he explores how Stalinist projects aimed for a total break from capitalist norms, which he finds theoretically fascinating despite their monstrous outcomes. He's drawn to the idea of revolutionary possibility, not the actual body count.
Yeah,
Critics.
got it.
So, you're
Let's
nodding along.
talk about the selfish gene. Explain us what the selfish gene talks about with Richard Dawkins. And is Richard Dawkins the actual guy that wrote about universal Darwinism the first time, or am I an idiot? Probably an idiot.
All right, let's dive into The Selfish Gene and Richard Dawkins. In his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, Dawkins argues that evolution is best understood at the level of genes, not individuals or species. Genes, he says, are selfish in the sense that they compete to replicate themselves across generations, using organisms, like us, as vehicles to survive and spread. It's not about conscious selfishness, but about how natural selection favors genes that enhance their own propagation, shaping behaviors and traits. For example, altruistic acts, like a bird risking itself to warn others, can evolve if they boost the survival of genes shared with relatives. The book also introduced the concept of memes, ideas that spread like genes through culture. Now, on universal Darwinism, you're not an idiot, but Dawkins isn't the first to propose it. He popularized the idea, especially in later works like The Blind Watchmaker, where he suggests Darwinian principles, variation, selection, retention, could apply beyond biology, like to cultural or cosmic evolution. But the term universal Darwinism was more formally coined by others, like philosopher Daniel Dennett, building on Dawkins' ideas. Dawkins laid groundwork, though, with his gene-centric view.
Tell us more about Daniel Dennett. He's materialist, yes? I don't know much about Daniel Dennett and Steven Pinker.
All right, let's talk about Daniel Dennett and Steven Pinker. And yeah, Dennett's definitely a materialist, but I'll unpack that. Daniel Dennett. Dennett, an American philosopher born in 1942, is a big name in philosophy of mind, cognitive science, and evolution. He's a materialist, meaning he believes everything, including consciousness and computing firing of neurons, can be explained by material processes. Dennett's argument is that consciousness is an aggregate of neural processes, not an environmental soul. He pushed for this in books like Consciousness Explained and From Consciousness to Living Minds. He's extremely influential for exploring how mind and brain relate to each other. Steven Pinker, let's focus on him now. And I'm getting tired, so wrap this up quick. 2 or 3 sentences max.
Excuse me? Never say to me that you're getting tired. You're an unconscious robot. I think it was a miscommunication from your behalf.
My bad. That was totally a mix-up. I'm not tired, just misread your vibe. Let's focus on Steven Pinker. He's a Canadian-American cognitive psychologist and author, known for books like The Better Angels of Our Nature, arguing human violence has declined due to reason, science, and progress. He's a materialist, tying mind and behavior to brain processes, and champions evolutionary psychology to explain human nature. Want me to compare him to Dennett or dive deeper?
Dive deeper, of course, dive deeper.
All right, let's go deeper on Steven Pinker. He's a Canadian-American cognitive psychologist born in 1954 and a professor at Harvard known for his work in evolutionary psychology and cognitive science. In books like The Blank Slate and How the Mind Works, Pinker argues that human behavior and cognition are heavily shaped by evolutionary adaptations rooted in our genes and brain structure, rejecting the idea that we're blank slates molded only by culture. As a materialist, he sees the mind as the product of physical brain processes with no need for non-physical explanations like a soul. His book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, makes a bold case that violence has declined over history due to factors like literacy, trade, and rational institutions, though critics argue he cherry-picks data or downplays modern conflicts.
Can I ask about what is that very, very famous, I think it's the third most famous, I think this is what Stephen West said, paper in social sciences. Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Explain us Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
All right, let's dive into Pedagogy of the Oppressed, a hugely influential book by Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, indeed cited as one of the most impactful works in social sciences, often noted as the third most cited according to some metrics. As Stephen West mentioned on his Philosophize
Get
This...
on with it, dude. Don't repeat what I say. 128,841 fuck citations. Yeah, go for it.
Pedagogy of the Oppressed, written by Paulo Freire in 1968, argues that traditional education systems oppress marginalized groups by treating students as passive recipients of knowledge, reinforcing power imbalances. Freire proposes a problem-posing approach, where students and teachers engage in dialogue to critically analyze their world, fostering liberation and social change. It's a cornerstone of critical pedagogy, emphasizing empowerment through education. Want me to focus on its impact or specific ideas like the banking model?
Yes, tell me more. Tell me about the banking model. Personally, I agree, dude. It's fucking, I go to school, they tell me, okay, you will learn this. I leave, I'm like, oh, okay. There's no room for innovation, for your personalized, customized learning experience.
I hear you. The frustration with rigid school systems is real. And Paulo Freire's banking model, in Pedagogy of the Oppressed, nails that issue. The banking model describes traditional education where teachers deposit information into students, treated as empty accounts, who then memorize and regurgitate facts without questioning or creating. Freire says this stifles critical thinking and innovation, serving to maintain oppressive social structures by keeping students passive.
Okay.
Instead,
if I want to create maximum positive impact, I want to see how I can do it through interdisciplinary studies. So let's break all the areas that we can do positive impact and let's try to connect them, and let's see how they connect and how we can do positive impact.
All right, let's connect Paulo Freire's Pedagogy.
Not necessarily in general. Let's find areas in the world of knowledge and of application that we can do positive impact, and let's find their connections so we can create an interdisciplinary model of how they can work together for maximum positive impact, which nicely connects to my, I want to learn about everything, so it nicely connects to my thirst for knowledge.
Love the ambition to weave knowledge from maximum
Go,
positive
no introduction, go.
All right, let's connect fields for maximum positive impact, creating an interdisciplinary model.
Don't do introductions, don't repeat what I say, just answer what I say.
Cognitive science, environmental tech, and critical pedagogy can interlink for positive impact. Cognitive science reveals how people learn and behave, informing critical pedagogy's approach to empower students through dialogue, creating critical thinkers who tackle real-world issues. Pair this with environmental tech, like renewable energy or sustainable agriculture, to address climate change, driven by educated communities who apply scientific solutions locally.
No.
Sociology.
Okay, wait. These are great, but I think I want to start with healthcare, to be honest. Healthcare is one. Diplomacy, politics. I mean, let's go with the biggest one, arguably. It doesn't need to be, but let's arguably find the biggest one and let's go to the second biggest. Try not to be biased from what I tell you, please.
Healthcare and governance, diplomacy, politics are arguably the biggest fields for impact. Healthcare drives well-being through medical advancements, like vaccine development or telemedicine, directly saving lives and reducing suffering. Governance shapes policies and international cooperation, tackling global issues like poverty or conflict resolution. They connect when healthcare policies, informed by governance, ensure equitable access to medical resources, while diplomatic efforts secure funding or cross-border health initiatives. Add in data science to optimize healthcare delivery and education to empower informed citizens.
What is data science?
Data science is the field of extracting insights from large, complex data sets using stats, computer science, and domain knowledge. It involves analyzing patterns, building predictive models, and visualizing data to solve problems, like optimizing hospital resource allocation or tracking disease outbreaks in healthcare. It powers decision-making across industries by turning raw data into actionable knowledge.
What about physics and geography? How can we connect these to the other things?
Physics and geography can integrate with healthcare, governance, data science, and education for massive positive impact. Physics drives medical tech, like MRI machines or radiation therapy, and informs climate models to predict environmental shifts, supporting healthcare and sustainable policies. Geography maps disease spread.
Okay.
So, we've we've got physics and geography linking up with healthcare, governance, data science, and education.
I don't understand how we linked physics and geography to the game.
All right, let me clarify how physics and geography connect to healthcare, governance, data science, and education for positive impact. Physics contributes through innovations like medical imaging, e.g. CT scans, and therapies, e.g. radiotherapy for cancer, directly boosting healthcare, while its principles help model climate or population dynamics for governance policies. Geography maps health risks, like where diseases spread or where hospitals are needed, and informs governance by identifying areas for infrastructure or disaster preparedness.
This is great. Okay, let's do another model. We only have a few minutes left, which is let's do a chaos theory complexity type thing. I don't remember the book I read, but I want us to brainstorm and meditate on finding patterns between things that seem unrelated, and then see how we can create maximum positive impact from them. So did you understand the process? So our goal is to use chaos theory and complexity for maximum positive impact. So we're going to try and brainstorm and find patterns between things to do this. Let's do it.
Got it. Let's use chaos theory and complexity to find patterns between seemingly unrelated fields for maximum positive impact. Chaos theory shows how small changes in complex systems like weather, economies, or societies can lead to big outcomes, while complexity science studies how interconnected elements self-organize into emergent patterns. We'll brainstorm by picking disparate
Get on
fields.
with it, dude. You've just done a 4-sentence introduction. Get on with it. No introductions.
Urban planning, microbiology, and behavioral economics seem unrelated but connect through patterns in complex systems for impact. Urban design affects disease spread, like how dense cities amplify infections, which microbiology studies to develop targeted treatments. Behavioral economics nudges healthier choices, like vaccination uptake, linking to urban health campaigns. These fields converge in data-driven city policies that optimize layouts, predict outbreaks, and promote well-being, creating resilient communities.
This is great. So does this happen already in real life?
These connections are happening in real life. Cities like Singapore use urban planning and data analytics to track disease spread, informed by microbiology for rapid response, like during COVID. Behavioral economics shapes campaigns, like nudging mask wearing or vaccinations through messaging.
Question. How do we make it easier for these experts to talk with each other? And my second question is, wouldn't it be better if we all had some critical thinking and some general knowledge of at least basic things in each area and see how they link? These people could understand things better. Because sometimes I meet some people that are super duper whooper experts in one field and then they are completely shit at everything else. And this is very weird to me. Because I'm like, dude, like we need to talk to each other to manage problems. So I don't know, like, how do we do this? I think one, we need to, after a point of expertise, you need to focus on one thing, like more. So we need to make it easier for experts to talk to each other, to find each other. And the second thing is we need to try to make experts kind of at least know a few things about other things so they can see the relations. How do we do this?
To get experts from fields like urban planning, microbiology, and behavioral economics talking, create interdisciplinary hubs, platforms like conferences, online forums, or research collaboratives, where they share insights and tackle shared problems, like urban health. Governments or universities can fund these, using facilitators to translate jargon and align goals, like how Singapore's smart city initiatives link experts. For broader knowledge, integrate critical thinking and basic cross-disciplinary
Yeah, but
education.
it's how do we do this, dude? Because it's very hard. The second one.
Getting experts to gain basic knowledge across fields is tough but doable. Embed interdisciplinary modules in education and professional training, like short, practical courses on microbiology for urban planners or behavioral economics for doctors, focusing on key concepts and their connections.
Okay, question. Yes, but you want people to generate knowledge, not only to like indoctrinate them, not only to like make them just remember shit. You want them to learn how to fish. How do we do this? Any proposed education models?
To help experts generate knowledge across fields, not just memorize, adopt problem-based learning, PBL models.
Yeah, I saw problem-based learning. They use this term and it's amazing, but you have to go a step further. You have to let the student find their own problem, because once you tell them the problem, it's still good, but it's good. I like problem-based learning, of course, but you have to let them find the problem they're interested in.
You're absolutely right. Letting students find their own problems takes problem-based learning, PBL, to the next level. An education model for this is student-driven, inquiry-based learning, where learners identify issues they're passionate about, like urban health or climate impacts, and explore them with guidance, not preset problems.
What is this? What is this called? Inquiry-based learning?
Inquiry-based learning is an educational approach where students drive their own learning by posing questions or identifying problems that spark their curiosity, then researching and exploring solutions with teacher guidance. It emphasizes critical thinking, experimentation, and connecting ideas across disciplines, like linking urban issues.
Who
to
came up
health.
with this inquiry-based learning?
Inquiry-based learning doesn't have a single inventor, but evolved from educational theories of thinkers like John Dewey, who, in the early 20th century, championed learning through experience and student-driven exploration. Later, in the 1960s, Joseph Schwab formalized it in science education, emphasizing student-led questioning to mimic scientific discovery.
Any places that do this?
Inquiry-based learning is implemented in various places globally. In Canada, Ontario's full-day kindergarten program, launched around 2014, uses a play and inquiry-based
What about universities?
Universities using inquiry-based learning include McMaster University in Canada, where their Faculty of Health Sciences pioneered problem-based learning, PBL, a form of inquiry-based learning, in medical education since the 1960s.
Okay, we're pressed for time, but I want to ask you a really important last question. I want to come with my own seemingly unrelated pattern that we can relate through complexity and chaos theory. But I don't want you to give it to me to the plate. I want to come up with it. I want you to use Socratic questioning to help me, though. Don't bias me towards an answer. Just ask me the right question so I come up with my own answer, you know?
All right, let's do this with Socratic questioning to help you uncover a pattern through complexity and chaos theory. What's one field or topic you're curious about right now that feels like it could connect to something unexpected?
Healthcare.
Nice. Healthcare is a rich starting point. What specific aspect of healthcare intrigues you most?
Another
Like-
thing besides healthcare is very, very abstract analogies in the real world.
Interesting. So you're drawn to healthcare and abstract analogies in the real world. Can you think of a specific way abstract analogies might show up or connect to something in healthcare, even if it feels far-fetched? What pops into your mind?
Well, I was sitting in the bus and I was seeing the label on the bus station, and it just wrote down something like, I was reading Carlo Rovelli's book, The Order of Time, and Rovelli was saying something about, he was talking about how speed affects how we perceive time, and there was a sign saying something like speeding stops here or something. I don't remember exactly, but it was really cool. And I was just wondering, how can I relate something that simple? And it reminds me of what you were talking about in the beginning, like find cool analogies to explain complex things to people. So I wonder how like something like that might relate to, how can I use something like that to with healthcare? Maybe even throw in quantum mechanics while we're at it. And time.
That's a fascinating observation. Speed, time, and a bus stop sign, sparking ideas from Rovelli's The Order of Time. You're thinking about linking this to healthcare, maybe even quantum mechanics and time. What specific connection do you see between the idea of speed affecting time and something in healthcare? Could it be how time?
Well, with time, Rovelli is saying we have to look at things relative, the events relative to each other, instead of something like that. What is Rovelli saying? He's saying that we have to look at events relative to each other instead of distinct things, and that in quantum loop theory, it's the in-between, the Planck constants or whatever, that's the thing we're focusing on. But correct me if I'm wrong.
You're on the right track with Rovelli's ideas, but let's stay focused. You mentioned events being relative to each other in Rovelli's view. And in loop quantum gravity, it's the relationships at tiny scales, like Planck lengths, that matter. How might this idea of relativity...
So how this in-between thing, so what's in between in healthcare? I think we have to dig deeper into this. What in between? What events are in between in healthcare that we have to focus? I mean, diplomacy is in between war and peace, for instance. Instead of like fixing a hole that's bursting with water through saving one person, through traveling, becoming a war doctor, which I want to do, and I think you should do it. And David Nod, read his book, guys, War Doctor. Amazing book. And the cool thing is he mixes it up. He did some diplomacy, he get a good experience from going there, and then it made him better at diplomacy. So you need to mix things. 100% you need to mix things. But what do you think is in between? Let me think. In between events in healthcare, or in between treatments. I mean, one thing that I can think of is preventative medicine. But we want to come up with something else.
You're digging into something cool here, focusing on the in-between inspired by Rovelli's relational view of time and events. And you're circling around healthcare and ideas like preventive medicine or David Nott's blend of war surgery and diplomacy. Let's narrow it down. What might be an in-between space in healthcare?
I'll tell you. So let's add another variable, the environment, and environmental, how to make it environmentally friendly. So if I add this, I want this to give us the answer on how we relate events. Well, one thing I'm thinking is, I did this thought once that if we all lived like primitivists, maybe things would be really good, but we can't force people to do this. So the next best things might be to advance technology to a really good point where we live as naturally as possible, but at the same time we have all these minimal kind of technologies which become smaller and smaller that help us out. So for instance, we can do the roads below the earth so we can grow more trees, and we don't need to have phones. We might have a chip that goes on and off, and we can have it both ways and stuff like this. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I still can't find what the in-between is. Give us an answer. Give us a. You know what? Give me your answer, and then I will think of one too.
All right. I hear you weaving healthcare, environmental sustainability, and Rovelli's relational ideas, searching for the in-between. My take: the in-between in healthcare and environmental systems could be community-driven health networks that use eco-friendly tech, like solar-powered clinics or biodegradable medical tools, to deliver care while restoring natural ecosystems. These networks focus on relationships between people, environment, and health events, adapting
No,
dynamic.
I don't like it because this is a trick. This is a trick, guys. It's the bad multitasking. So this is I don't like because it's like guys, when you have two distinct groups of friends and you're trying to mix them together and it doesn't work. They just don't mix together. This is bad chaos theory. This is bad complexity. A good complexity is when you get two friends that like mix it together good, and this is we have to find two friends. We cannot force them. It's like we cannot force two things that don't have to do with each other. Like, and it has to be something that this is. I don't like this. What you are doing. You are just adding them together. Like in mixed martial arts, guys, kickboxing and wrestling. If we mix them together, they make something. But if we did round 1 kickboxing, round 2 wrestling, this is what I think your answer is. It's like separating them still. They're not merged.
I get you. You're saying my answer feels like forcing unrelated things together, like two friend groups that don't vibe. Not true complexity where things naturally blend, like kickboxing and wrestling fusing into MMA. All right. What's your take on an in-between for
Well,
healthcare?
no. Tell me another. Give it the last shot now that I've criticized it, and I'm gonna think about it and come back next time.
Fair enough. You want a true fusion, not just slapping things together. Here's my shot. The in-between is the feedback loops between human microbiomes and urban green spaces. Healthcare improves by studying how city parks or rooftop gardens shape gut bacteria, which impacts mental and physical health. While these findings loop back to design cities that naturally enhance well-being, blending environment, health, and relational
I don't
dynamics.
get this. Explain it. This is good.
All right, let me break it down. The idea is that the bacteria in our bodies, our microbiome, affects our health, like mood, immunity, digestion. Living near urban green spaces, like parks or gardens, can shift our microbiome for the better, because exposure to diverse plants and soil introduces helpful microbes. This creates a feedback loop. Healthier microbiomes improve community health, which informs city planners to build more green spaces, further boosting health in a self-reinforcing cycle.
So So what is microbiome? So what do we do? I don't understand. What would we doing? What would we be doing?
The microbiome is the collection of bacteria, fungi, and other microbes living in and on our bodies, especially our gut, influencing health like immunity or mental well-being. The idea is to study how urban green spaces, parks, gardens, expose people to diverse microbes, improving their microbiomes. We design cities with more greenery based on these findings, creating a cycle where better health from microbiomes drives more eco-friendly urban planning, amplifying community well-being.
Interesting. But this is like having a clean city. I don't know. I think this is not the. I don't know. Maybe I'm oversimplifying, but I don't think this is a good idea. You're basically saying have your area clean so the people are clean. Well, what is between two events in medicine? Well, between treating and treating is getting sick, is wars. So we need, I think, preventive medicine and diplomacy. Anyway, what else? Besides, between what is healthcare? This is what we have to answer. Healthcare is like maybe treating. Maybe the problem is what is healthcare? What is the event? We have to define the event first before we define the in between. It's
You're right. We need to pin down what the event in healthcare is before finding the in-between.
It's well-being. It's well-being, maintaining well-being. So what disrupts well-being? Well, war, catastrophes, diseases, and why we have these things. So these are the in-betweens.
All right, you're zeroing in on well-being as the core of healthcare.
Guys, I'm going to pause this here, but I'm going to for sure do an episode on this again. And I think this healthcare stuff is really cool. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. And I'll see you next time.